Penelope looked at Carter and couldn't understand what he was saying. Carter, did you hear me? We're going to have a baby. No, Penelope, I heard you perfectly. Just one correction. The baby will be yours, not ours. I don't need a baby. Or you, for that matter. Penelope grabbed his hand. Carter, what are you talking about? You said you loved me, that we'd get married and live happily ever after. Carter pulled his hand away and laughed. How naive you are. Who needs someone like you? I said all that because you were hard to get, and I'm not used to giving up on what I want. So goodbye. I can give you money to solve your problem. Penelope understood. Carter means it. Carter. He looked at her with a smirk. What, Carter? You should have your own head on your shoulders. And frankly, I'm not interested in what you'll do next. I have my path, you have yours. And marrying you... He laughed. You do understand you're too far from my circle. Penelope said nothing more. She waited for Carter to finish his speech and left. But now she didn't know where to go. She was asked to leave the dormitory. She had dropped out of school, and the apartment she lived in was rented by Carter. In fact, Penelope was never this irresponsible. She believed that everything in life should be done right. That's why she didn't have a boyfriend before Carter. And Carter? He showed her a fairy tale that Penelope couldn't even dream of. Her inner voice occasionally reminded her not to trust a stranger blindly. But Penelope, despite hearing that voice, couldn't help but trust Carter. Fortunately, she managed to get into the apartment. She quickly packed her things into one bag and went outside. She needed to find a place to sleep. This was also a problem, as Penelope hadn't been in touch with her friends lately. Why did she need such boring friends? They all tried to prove something to her. Or rather, they had tried, and it would have been better if she had listened to them. Now she had to ask to stay overnight. God, what have I become? Penelope sat on the first bench she saw and burst into tears, so much so that she didn't notice what was happening around her. Bennett, why are you putting on a show on the street? Penelope looked up in surprise and stopped crying. Standing in front of her was Laurel. She was the head of their group and Penelope's dormitory neighbor. Laurel was always very strict and boring, but they got along quite well. I didn't put on a show. Tears streamed down her cheeks again, but Sabine quickly said, Enough, come with me. Are these your things? Sabine grabbed the bag and walked ahead, not even looking back at Penelope, as if she didn't consider the possibility that Penelope might disobey. Penelope followed her. When she saw they were heading to the dormitory, she asked, Sabine, maybe I shouldn't go there? Sabine looked back in surprise. I understand you have nowhere else to go. Come, stay overnight, tell me everything, and we'll figure out what to do. Penelope sighed quietly. What can we come up with now? Absolutely nothing. Laurel listened carefully to the whole story and sighed. I won't lecture you because you already understand everything yourself. What are you going to do about the baby? Penelope's eyes flashed stubbornly. Nothing. If I can't find anything here, I'll go back to the village and raise it. I see, that's what I thought. You need to find a job with accommodation. How? The usual way. As a caregiver, nanny, for someone in a big house. Penelope sighed. Who would take someone like me? Well, you don't have to say it right away, and then deal with it as it happens. Penelope looked at Sabine in amazement. Did you say that? What about it? Yes, I was always against lying, but this is for the sake of the baby and you. You're like a helpless child yourself now. Okay, go to sleep and I'll call the girls. Maybe someone has something in mind. In the morning, Penelope woke up when Sabine was already gone. On the nightstand beside the bed lay a note with a phone number. At the bottom it was signed, Wealthy, ill, in great need of a caregiver companion. Seems to live alone. Call. The voice on the other end of the phone sounded lively. He asked Penelope a few questions, then said, Well, if you're not scared of taking care of an almost immobile person, come over. We'll discuss the details on site. When she saw the house where she was expected, she was breathless. Large, you could even say huge. Not ostentatious, but very stylish. The security guard escorted her inside, and Penelope was overwhelmed by the air of wealth. 5 minutes later, the owner of the house appeared himself. Hello, my name is William. As you can see, the only thing alive in me is my head and one arm. The other arm is half dead, and my legs are completely gone. But let's not dwell on the sad. Have a seat. William turned out to be a very interesting and intelligent person, and also a good psychologist. Within half an hour, Penelope, choking back tears, had told him her entire story. He listened attentively, occasionally nodding his head. Penelope, don't be so hard on yourself. As harsh as it may sound, you're not the first and unfortunately not the last. It happens. Naivety is slowly dying in our world, but it's still there. Let's do this. I'll hire you on a 1-month probationary period. If we suit each other, great. If not, I'll try to help you somehow. Penelope smiled weakly and wiped her tears. Of course, I'll do my best. And Penelope tried. First of all, she cooked healthy meals for William. He grumbled, but he ate. One day he admitted he felt much better. He also stopped having nightmares, which was very important. Do you often have nightmares? Unfortunately, in the accident that left me like this, my wife died. Her screams still echo in my ears. Penelope clasped her hands to her chest. I'm sorry, forgive me for making you remember. No, Penelope, don't apologize. I never forgot about it. It's all right. Better tell me, have you registered for prenatal care? Everything okay? Penelope smiled. William was concerned about her baby as if it were his own. Lately, they often drank tea together in the living room, talked, watched movies. And those evenings felt so cozy to her, as if she were not in a stranger's house, but her own. Penelope found some cool exercise routine on the internet and made William do it every day. His left arm worked fine, but his right barely moved. It turned out that right after the accident, where William had already suffered enough injuries, he had a stroke. And all this together had such consequences. She understood that the man had given up on himself and she really wanted to help him, even if just a little. Or if not help, at least brighten his loneliness. Penelope was already in her 7th month of pregnancy. The dowry for the son was bought, thanks to William, and she was supposed to return from the hospital to the same house. William had decided that too. Penelope was feeding the man breakfast. She turned to the stove for a moment when he startled her with a shout. Penelope! Penelope, look! The girl turned sharply and froze. For the first time since they met, William was holding a spoon with his right hand and even managed to bring it to his mouth a few times. Penelope clapped her hands. Wow, we did it! We'll make your legs move on their own too. No skipping exercises. William nodded and immediately forgot about the porridge, watching his fingers move and smiling. Penelope said sternly, Oatmeal, sir. William nodded and quickly finished the porridge. In the evening, William knocked on her door. Penelope, I hate to trouble you, but my nephew is coming for a few days tomorrow. He only visits when he needs money, but I don't mind. I have no other relatives left, so consider him young. They're not sentimental. Money matters more to them. Could you make something tasty? Penelope nodded. Of course, William. But how old is your nephew so I know what to prepare? Kids can be so picky sometimes. Kids? William laughed. Let that be a surprise for you. You'll see and meet him tomorrow. Penelope spent the whole day cooking from early morning. She decided to make dishes that could appeal to both an adult and a child. The host may have set up a test for her. She saw that William was excited. Although he tried to appear indifferent, he was eagerly awaiting his nephew's arrival. When the doorbell rang and William went to open it, Penelope retreated to her room. The table was set, everything was in place, she wouldn't get in the way. Penelope heard the conversation, meaning everyone was already at the table. Not even 15 minutes passed before William appeared in the doorway. Penelope, you can't hide in here, come join us at the table. My nephew is eager to meet the person who so easily tolerates my terrible character. Oh, what are you saying? You have a wonderful character. Penelope decided she would sit for just 5 minutes. She would check what needed to be added or removed from the table and then leave. She walked out and stopped. Carter? Sitting at the table was that very Carter, her Carter, who had become a stranger in an instant. She even took a step back, but William grabbed her hand. His eyes sparkled. Wait, Penelope, do you mean to say that my nephew Carter is that young man? Yes, indeed. Carter jumped up from the table. What are you doing here? Why did you find my uncle? Are you trying to get a piece? Don't even think about it, you won't succeed. Penelope shook her head. I didn't know he was your Uncle Carter. How tired I am of you. I was such a fool to get involved with you. Uncle William, throw her out. She's like a leech. Penelope covered her face with her hands and rushed to her room. She ran in, closed the door behind her, and hastily started packing her bag. When she was almost done, the baby in her belly began to protest vigorously, and Penelope fell onto the bed to cry again. She heard raised voices in the living room, but she couldn't care less. Once everything quieted down, she would leave. She either dozed off or simply lost track of time. But when the door to her room burst open, it was already dark outside. Penelope looked at William in fear, but he looked at her calmly. Then his gaze shifted to the bag. "Where are you going, may I ask?" "Where to? Carter is your nephew. I can't stay here. I just want you to know that I had no idea you could be related to him." "Penelope, I believe you. Carter has already left, and we had a very serious conversation. I suggest we do this. Everyone has had a stressful day. Go to sleep, and by tomorrow I'll have figured out what to do next. As you understand, your child is my great-nephew, and I certainly won't allow his mother to wander the streets." In the morning when Penelope woke up, William was already waiting for her in the kitchen. It was immediately clear that he hadn't slept, but Penelope noticed something else. He was confidently holding a cup of coffee in his right hand, and he was fidgeting his leg, as people do when they're nervous. "Penelope, I've figured everything out. Now it's just up to you to agree. We need to get married. It's the only way I can be sure that everything will be fine for you. I understand that I'm 20 years older, but we don't have to live like husband and wife." 5 years passed. "Dad, Dad!" William, who was admiring the new swings, turned to his son. "What's wrong?" "Mom doesn't feel well." William rushed into the house. He had been on his feet for 2 years now, and for the past year he had been actively exercising so that no illness could bring him down again. Penelope was sitting on the couch, pale, and looking at him with fear. "Penelope, what is it?" Penelope smiled hesitantly. "William, I think you're going to be a dad soon." Penelope had married him, and 5 years ago she had firmly said, "If I marry you, then everything will be real between us." William looked at her in confusion. "Penelope, are you serious?" "As serious as it gets." William rubbed the bridge of his nose. Penelope looked at him with a silent question, and then he suddenly said, "We should buy a bigger house. My children need plenty of space." Then he rushed to hug her. "You are the best woman in the world because you constantly make me happier and happier." Penelope hugged him tightly. "No, it's you who are the best man, because only with you did I learn what happiness is." If you enjoyed the story, please support me with a like. One click, but it means a lot to me. Thank you.